Since first appearing in Detective Comics number 27 in 1939, Batman has captured the public consciousness across all different types of media, showing up in comics, radio, television, movies, novels, and video games. Welcome to Top 10 Nerd. I'm Andrew Boyd, and today I will be going over the top 10 biggest Batman events in DC Comics history. Number 10. Hush. After having success with the character, writing limited series such as The Long Halloween and Dark Victory, writer Jeff Loeb achieved a long-time goal and was assigned to the main Batman monthly title. With art by superstar comic book artist and co-creator of Image Comics Jim Lee, Loeb set out to craft a 12-issue mystery with a new villain, Hush, pulling the strings of a plot to destroy the Dark Knight by manipulating some of his most iconic enemies and allies and turning them against him. Hush has some unforgettable moments, such as one of the best fights between Batman and Superman in the character's histories, and the art by Lee is one of the most definitive modern interpretations of the character, but Hush doesn't quite stick the landing when it comes to crafting an engaging mystery, as the identity of Hush is somewhat predictable in a way that, say, the identity of the Holiday Killer in Loeb's Long Halloween is not. Although it is definitely worth a read, it hasn't had the permanent effects on the characters and the continuity as some of the other events on this list. Number 9. The Wedding. After years of playing cat and mouse, Batman and Catwoman finally decided to tie the knot during Tom King's run on Batman. The lead up to the nuptials featured a lot of interesting stories dissecting the nature of the relationship between Bruce Wayne and Selina Kyle, and asking the central question of can Batman be happy and still be Batman? This culminated in the Wedding album issue, which promised to feature the Bat and the Cat finally tying the knot. Unfortunately, Catwoman gets cold feet and the wedding doesn't happen, but what makes the Wedding album issue special is, like the Superman Lois Lane wedding issue that inspired it, this issue brings back past Batman artists such as Frank Miller, Neil Adams, Tim Sale, Greg Capullo, and Jim Lee, with each influential artist drawing a different page of the comic. So while the story itself isn't great and feels like a bit of a fake out, all of those artists drawing for one book makes it worth checking out. Number 8. Dark Knight's Metal. Dark Knight's Metal is the reunion between writer Scott Snyder and artist Greg Capullo, and is the payoff to several plot points they introduced on their extremely popular runs on Batman, such as The Court of the Owls, Death of the Family, and Zero Year, all of which just narrowly missed out on being featured on this list. It tells the story of the creature Barbados, who assembles a group of evil Batmen from across the dark multiverse in an attempt to destroy the multiverse. Each of the evil Batmen are distinct and dangerous, such as the Murder Machine, who was a Batman who was taken over by a murderous rogue AI of Alfred the Butler, the Red Death, who lost all of his sidekicks and in order to be fast enough to stop future crimes, absorbed the powers and consciousness of the Flash, the Devastator, who gave himself a doomsday virus in order to kill his universe's evil Superman, and most notably, the Batman Who Laughs. The Batman Who Laughs is a version of the character who was forced to kill the Joker and was infected with a Joker toxin, which gave him the same murderous impulses of his old enemy. Dark Knight's Metal is a really fun story that introduces a lot of memorable new enemies for Batman and the rest of the Justice League, but its cosmic nature may not appeal to readers who are more fond of a grounded detective Batman. Number 7. War Games. One of the more controversial events in Batman's history, I have a real soft spot for War Games, as it was the era of Batman comics I grew up with, and it sets up a lot of really important future stories in Gotham. When Tim Drake quits the role of Robin, Spoiler, aka Stephanie Brown, takes over the mantle and becomes the first Girl Wonder, not counting Carrie Kelly, who is not canon. Stephanie's run as Robin is short-lived, as her tendency to not follow Batman's orders gets her fired. Wanting to prove herself to the Dark Knight, Stephanie steals one of his contingency plans from the Bat computer, hoping that if she successfully implements it, she will finally be accepted as a member of the Bat family. The plan involves bringing all of the gangs in Gotham City together under one leader that is under Batman's control. Unbeknownst to Stephanie, the chosen gang leader, Matches Malone, is one of Batman's many aliases, so when she sets the plan in motion without Batman's knowledge, Matches doesn't show up to the meeting of the gang leaders. This triggers a massive gang war that crosses over between the Batman titles as well as issues of Robin, Catwoman, Batgirl, and Nightwing. War Games is a brutal Batman story that permanently changes the status quo in Gotham, ending with the Black Mask taking control of Gotham's underworld and leading directly into the Under the Red Hood storyline, which brought back second Robin, Jason Todd. Number 6. Battle for the Cowl. When Batman was seemingly killed in the final crisis by Darkseid, the remaining members of the Bat family were given the seemingly impossible task of carrying on without him and keeping Gotham safe. The family is driven into conflict as they argue about how best to carry on Bruce's legacy, and who, if anyone, should take up the cowl and become the new Batman. It's a great run which really breaks new ground for the characters, with Tim Drake, a deranged Jason Todd, and a very reluctant Dick Grayson all throwing their hats in the ring and battling for the right to become the new Dark Knight. It features a lot of great moments for the Bat family, and even has a callback to the infamous cult storyline, with Bruce's video will to Jason talking about how they should have discussed the traumas they had gone through, rather than just trying to ignore them and move past them. The story marks the beginning of the excellent period of Dick Grayson and Damian Wayne becoming the new Batman and Robin, and is a must-read for fans of the pre-New 52 Batman. Number 5. Batman Year One. When Frank Miller signed on to write The Dark Knight Returns, part of his contract stipulated that he must also write a retelling of Batman's origin. Originally conceived as a graphic novel, Miller teamed with artist David Mazzucchelli, with whom he had created the iconic Daredevil Born Again story for Marvel Comics. Due to the poor sales of the monthly Batman title, editor Denny O'Neil convinced Miller to split the graphic novel into 4 parts to be told in Batman numbers 404 through 407. In today's day and age, where we are constantly having to sit through retellings of Batman's origin and watch his parents get killed in front of him like every other week, it can be easy to forget that at the time of Year One's publication, there had been very few major explorations of Batman's tragic beginnings and early career other than the original story by Bill Finger and Bob Kane. Miller's take on Batman's first year of crime fighting proved so popular that it became the definitive take on Batman's early career and served as major inspiration for several adaptations, including Batman Begins and The Batman. After Year One, Batman's origin remained mostly untouched until Scott Snyder's 0-year run in 2013, which is also excellent, but it's no Year One. Seriously, if you're a Batman fan and you haven't read this book, you have to check it out as soon as possible, like right after you finish this video. Number 4. Knightfall. In the mid-90s, anti-hero characters such as the Punisher were becoming more and more popular with comic book readers. Their willingness to kill their villains while making sarcastic quips were leading many people to wonder if characters with more old-fashioned morals such as Superman and Batman had any place in this new generation. Longtime Batman editor Denny O'Neil came up with the idea of addressing this question head-on by crafting a story where Bruce Wayne was put out of commission and the writers would, quote, take a character with no reverence for human life and put him in the Bat costume. Knightfall introduces one of Batman's most popular rogues, Bane, who comes to Gotham with the plan of releasing all of Batman's enemies from Arkham so that Batman will be driven to exhaustion and be too weak to defeat Bane when he confronts him. Bane's plan succeeds and culminates in the iconic splash page of him lifting Batman over his head and breaking his back over his knee, leaving Bruce Wayne paralyzed. Although this is the most remembered moment of the book, this is really just the setup for the main story they are telling. Batman entrusts the Batmantle to the vigilante Azrael, who redesigns the Batsuit to be more brutal and dangerous. It's the perfect encapsulation of the 90s, with an over-the-top design and way more pouches than any one man could ever need. Azrael becomes more and more violent, having no problem with killing his enemies. As Bruce recovers from his injuries, he must confront the new Batman in order to reclaim the mantle and draw a line in the sand to say what the Batman legend will mean going forward. Knightfall is an ambitious story told across several issues of multiple monthly titles, but it honestly sometimes falls down under its own weight, being bloated and meandering at times without a clear sense of what it is trying to say about the characters. It has a lot of great elements, but the idea of telling such a long-form story across different books was improved upon and accomplished with much more cohesion 5 years later in our next entry. Number 3. No Man's Land. When DC Comics associate editor Jordan B. Gorfinkel wanted to prove himself and be promoted to a full editor, he knew he had to come up with something big. He spent a day typing out an idea and sent it to Denny O'Neil, who at this point was in charge of the entire Batman line. Gorfinkel left for vacation, and when he returned was informed by O'Neil that he had loved his idea and had run it up to top brass at DC, who had approved it. For all of 1999, all of the Batman comics would come together to tell a massive 86-part crossover story that would be known as No Man's Land. This massive undertaking required unprecedented collaboration and organization, as they told the story of Gotham City being hit by a massive earthquake and cut off from the rest of the world. Gotham is abandoned by the United States government and left to fend for itself as the various supervillains all take over different sections of the city as a desperate Bat family and GCPD try to protect the survivors and bring order back to the city. No Man's Land was a smash success, and to this day is the crossover event that all others are compared to. Number 2. A Death in the Family. When Dick Grayson quit being Robin and became the hero Nightwing, he was replaced by the second Robin, Jason Todd. Jason was a homeless street urchin who Batman took in after he caught him stealing the tires off of the Batmobile in Crime Alley. Unlike Dick Grayson, Jason was rebellious and impulsive, often clashing with the Dark Knight. This characterization led to him becoming unpopular with readers. This resulted in one of the biggest publicity stunts of DC Comics history. In the Death of the Family arc, Jason travels to the Middle East in an attempt to find his biological mother. In Batman number 427, Jason finds her but is captured by the Joker, who tortures him by beating him with a crowbar, leaving him to die in a warehouse that has been rigged to explode. Batman arrives at the warehouse just as it explodes, leaving Jason's ultimate fate a mystery. The back cover of this issue included two 900 numbers that readers could call in order to vote on whether Batman would be able to rescue the young boy wonder, or if he would perish in the explosion. Like a really high-stakes American Idol. The writing team prepared two different versions of the next issue in order to be prepared for either outcome. In the 35 hours that voting was open, they received 10,614 votes, with 5,271 voting for Robin's survival and 5,343 voting for his death. The readers had spoken, and Jason Todd was killed off in Batman number 428 due to a margin of 72 votes. Number 1. The Dark Knight Returns. Although he was a dark and brooding vigilante when first created, when the Comics Code Authority was introduced in the 1950s in a misguided effort to preserve the innocence of America's youth, Batman adventures became less and less grim before eventually taking on the more fantastical and campy tone that was adapted for the 60s Adam West TV show. Although this show is what took Batman from niche comic book character to cultural icon, its fun and silly take on the character did result in general audiences viewing Batman as a goofy crime fighter rather than a grim avenger. Despite his stories in the comics returning to a darker tone by the time of the 70s, the public perception of the character remained. This changed when superstar writer and artist Frank Miller came on the scene and created the 4-part miniseries Batman the Dark Knight, or as it was retitled in subsequent reissues, The Dark Knight Returns. Dark Knight Returns tells the story of a retired 55-year-old Batman who lives in a corrupt and crime-ridden Gotham that is under constant attack by the vicious mutant gang. Batman comes out of retirement and unleashes his brutal brand of vigilante justice on the criminals of Gotham. Dark Knight Returns is widely considered to be one of the greatest Batman stories ever told, and along with Alan Moore's Watchmen, was directly responsible for comic books being taken seriously as a medium that wasn't only for children. It returned Batman to his status as a dark and brooding vigilante, and along with Tim Burton's 1989 Batman movie, shifted the general audience's perception of Batman from campy 60s star to the status of dark brooding vigilante he enjoys today. Any other Batman events we should have included? Any other Heroes Big events that you want us to talk about? Let us know in the comments below, and remember to like and subscribe for more Top 10 Nerd.